What's going on, everybody? How we doing, fellas, friends, and allies? Welcome to Talkin Shop number 2 here on YouTube. So we've kind of rebooted this as we've worked through some technical challenges through Facebook and trying to figure out the best format to deliver this live stream, to you guys every single week. So I feel like right now we've got a pretty good thing going, but here's what I need. I need your help. If you're here watching either live or on a replay later, if you could just comment below, let me know based on your experience, how's the audio, number one. And then that was really the biggest hiccup last week, was the audio was still not dialed in. So I think I've got that figured out now, but I just want to make sure on your end, as you're watching, listening, engaging, that everything is coming through for you a-okay. But again, thank you guys for hopping in. My name's Josh Overton. I get the honor and the privilege to be the Zoweh Allies director. Would love for you, if you're watching live, to throw in the live chat right now. Just let me know that you're here, maybe where you're watching from, maybe what you're eating for lunch as we hang out here today. Over the last few weeks, we've been going through Zoweh's newest addition to the YouVersion Bible app, Listening Well, a guide for men. Listening Well, a guide for men. And if you have not joined us on that yet, let me see. I want to get that to you. I've got that pulled up. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure you have it. So can I share this? Yes. Beautiful. I'm going to share it right here in chat. Boom. There it is. Go ahead and click that link and go ahead and subscribe to this plan. And since this is our first test run, I know a lot of you guys actually read through the Bible app on your own, which is phenomenal. There's this really cool community factor where we can share a plan and kind of all read it together. And then there's a space at the end of each day where you as a user can add your comments, add your feedback, what God is engaging your heart with, what questions you're answering, what questions you're bringing to God. Really cool. And so we're already halfway through this reading plan. But when we're done with Listening Well, I'm actually going to take us through one of our base camp plans, which is comprised of YouVersion. And I'd like to do that. I'd like to, when we're going through the YouVersion portion of that plan, I'd love to do it as a community so we can kind of track each other, our progress each day or each week rather. And it'll give you a chance to add some feedback, which will be a lot of fun. So we'll handle that after we finish this devotional. But today is day 3 or week 3 of Listening Well, a guide for men. Skip, good to see you, man. Great audio. I've got you 5x5. Let's go, Josh. And from Southern Maryland, of course. Yeah, man. Good to see you, Skip. Thanks for being here, man. I hope you're doing well, buddy. Yeah, so let's just kind of dive in. And the way that we've been doing this is taking a portion of each day and focusing on that throughout the week. And so that's how I want to encourage you to engage it. You can certainly go in and read it daily. There's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of our discussion and our time here, we're doing each day as a week. So day 3 would be week 3. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is to model how you could use this in your small groups, in your band of brothers. And so we're going to jump into that. And then I've got a few things that I want to talk to you guys about on the back end. But as we look at today's devotion, so again, let me just set this up in case you're coming in on the back end of some of this. The whole idea and concept of Talkin Shop is we do it every day. I mean, what you do with your hands, your heart, your mind, what you do for work in your profession, and certainly what we do in terms of leading, right? Being leaders, being pastors, being guys that facilitate, manage, gather, invite. Whenever we are involved in something, looking at hobbies even, right? Fantasy football, golf, whatever your hobby is, hunting right now, whatever it is. It's interesting, right? How those things aren't self-contained. They bleed into your day-to-day relationships and your day-to-day conversations. That is Talkin Shop. And so we want to provide a space each and every Tuesday where we can do that, where we can talk shop. You know what I mean? And so this entire devotional is written to the perspective of you as men, but we want to take it a step further and look at it through the lens of a leader. look at it through the lens of a facilitator, a gatherer. Some of you are pastors. Some of you are men's ministry coordinators. Some of you just lead a small group. Some of you just gather guys wherever you can get them together, on your back deck, around a barn, at Panera, in a church space, in your corporate office space. You're just trying to gather guys and spend time getting to know one another, going on adventure and mission, engaging hearts and stories, and pursuing wholeness and healing and freedom, right? And so we want to look at this through the lens of that. Enoch, what's up, bro? Good to see you in chat. All right, so I want to focus on this verse right here, Proverbs 18, verse 13. Because before we even read it, just to catch you up the last 2 weeks, we've really spent time talking about how being heard affirms your worth. Being heard affirms your worth. And so we've looked at moments in your life where either A or B, right? A, there's been a time where you've shared, you've offered, and you have been engaged with, and you have felt heard, and you felt seen, you felt acknowledged, and how it made you feel, right? How it made your heart swell. It made you want to continue to engage. Or B, you've been in situations where you've offered and that hasn't happened, and the invitation not to continue to engage, but to disengage. So we've kind of covered some of that. And in relation to our groups, man, especially if some of you guys have, you've got ministries, you've got your initiative is made up of a church, or it's made up of 50, 60 guys that are all broken into small groups. And then even some of you, you're just gathering with a couple guys every other week. And even then, right, there's a challenge. There's a challenge for every man to feel seen and heard. And yet that's what we're after, right? That's the culture we want to set. So it's with that framework, with those lens, we want to look at this verse. Proverbs 18, verse 13. Spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish. Spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish. Now, Jevin, what's up, buddy? I know that none of us in here have ever spouted off before, right? But let's just take it back to our circles, our small groups, our ministries, our initiatives, right? Okay. How many times have we been so quick to just give an answer? How many times have we been so quick at the hip, man, to let this person know what we think, what they need to do to fix the situation? I mean, we do it in our groups. We do it in our marriages. We do it at our jobs. We do it in our relationships. That is the challenge that we're up against, because that's not how we were trained, right? If you think about the course of your life, if you think about most leadership books that you've read, conferences that you've attended, I know that's true for me. There's not a lot of breakouts about how to listen well. There's breakouts about how to be a better public speaker, how to craft a sermon or script, or to present your ideas, how to be a leader in that capacity. And there's a time and place for that. But we're talking about our groups. We're talking about creating a safe space where people can lean in, can feel seen, heard, and engaged. They feel safe. That builds trust. That leads to vulnerability. That is the culture that we want, right? And so I love this wise invitation to consider that maybe the best thing you can do when someone is sharing, maybe what the best thing you can do when someone is offering, is not to respond with what you think, but to engage them, right? And so that's what we're talking about here today. So let's just look at this. I'm going to read the last 3 paragraphs right here, okay? In church settings, in small groups, in our workplace, in our marriages and families, we may experience ways of listening that are overly aggressive and confrontational, or dismissive and aloof. Even well-intentioned advice or scripture verses that come at the wrong time, in the wrong way, can make someone feel more isolated than heard. Poor listening is not harmless. Okay, this is going to be a little bit of like look in the mirror for just a few minutes, okay? Poor listening is not harmless. And man, how many times have you chalked it up to that? You've seen it, right? I mean, like we've back to what we talked about the first 2 weeks. We've been the guy who's tried to slide in a joke. We've been the guy who's tried to contribute. We've been the guy that's tried to offer and it's not been received. Body language, like attention's not there. Eyes aren't focused. People are on their laptops doing stuff in the middle of the Zoom call while you're trying to share your spill. Right? It doesn't feel great. Not only have we experienced it, fellas, we got to be honest and realize that, well, we've probably been the offender in that. And realizing that when you see body language shift, when you see shoulders sulk and heads go down, that it's not harmless. Every experience of feeling dismissed, misjudged, or unheard is another opportunity for the enemy to gain a foothold in our hearts, for resentment or shame to seep in. That line right there. I'm just going to pause for just a second. Every experience of feeling dismissed, misjudged, or unheard is another opportunity for the enemy to gain a foothold in our hearts and in their hearts, for resentment or shame to seep in. Now, that's how the enemy works. We know this. And so I just want to paint a picture for you. You've got a guy who's bleeding out, who shows up to your event. He shows up to your group. And maybe he's been a guy that he's been invited. He knows he needs to be there, but he hasn't engaged. He finally shows up. What do you think the enemy has been spinning in his mind and in his heart for the days and weeks leading up to that? This is stupid. No one cares. You can't tell anyone about this. Do you really want to be embarrassed? They're going to judge you. No one's going to listen to you. And then they show up, and then that very thing happens. Whether it really truly happens or not, how they might interpret it. That's how the enemy works. What are the chances that we've interpreted every moment and experience of our life accurately? And so we as leaders, part of our responsibility is being on guard for that. Eyes and ears and hearts ready to engage. Eyes and ears open for that. Protecting, you're the shepherd. You're protecting that. Those voices, those whispers, the wolves of isolation and diminishment. We're seeking that out and we're stomping that out and we're doing our best so that every man can feel seen and heard, because we know how much it means. We know how much they feel valued in that. So the thing that I want to point you to is this right here. The good news is that God has more than enough grace to empower each of us to grow in offering good care. If you do find that you've defaulted into one of these unhelpful ways of listening, pause, name it, apologize, and then re-engage with the other person with kindness and attentiveness. Each mistake is an opportunity to move differently and continue growing. Okay, so pop quiz just for those of you that are listening and hanging out. If you could boil that down into one word, and spoiler alert, this is kind of like doing a test when the teachers give you the answers ahead of time. You guys remember that? Some in the early days of school, you have to take a test, but you have the answer. You have the answer key. All right, I've already given you the answer. We just read it. If you could boil that down into one word, just put in chat what you think that is. Okay, I want to show you the contrast of light and darkness. I want to show you the contrast of good and evil, kingdom of light, kingdom of darkness, how the enemy works and how God's redemptiveness works in all of this, and how he wants to partner with us as allies, as leaders to enforce it. Okay, so while you're, that one word, if you could distill that down into one word. So the enemy, every experience, because poor listening is not harmless, every experience of feeling dismissed, misjudged, or unheard is another opportunity for the enemy to gain a foothold in our hearts, for resentment or shame to seep in. That's the enemy. But the good news is that God has more than enough. Here's the word. Put it in chat. Grace. The good news is that God has more than enough grace to empower each of us to grow in offering good care. If you do find that you've defaulted into one of these unhelpful ways of listening, this is the redemptive part. Pause. Name it, and apologize for it. And then re-engage, just to circle back with kindness and attentiveness. We're going to mess up. We're going to miss it. We're going to miss that guy. That guy is going to get missed because that's how life works. That's how the enemy works. But friends, part of the goodness of God, the grace of God, and part of our responsibility is to be able to see it and not pass it off as harmless. It's not harmless. It could be the very thing that takes that guy out. It gives him the ammunition I knew it. I knew these guys weren't going to be different. I knew this wasn't going to be different. I knew that I wouldn't be seen, valued, worth. We talked about this. So we know the enemy is spinning that lie, but the grace is both for you to give yourself some grace, but also in that grace, be empowered to see him, go after him, circle back. The amount of times I've had to do this in my life, and obviously right in front of me are raising my kids, all in middle school. End of the day, I'm tired, they're tired. It's been a long day, work, school, homework, dinner, chores, baseball practice, soccer practice, working out, chores around the house. And it's like 8 o'clock and it's not quite time for bed, but I've had my limit. They've kind of had their limit. And boom, there it is. There's the setup. It's no different than your groups. You guys go to work all day, you come home, you prepare your space, you get the fires going, you get the studies ready, the guys come in, you get caught up, you get excited, you begin to monologue, you begin to teach and preach in a space where really we should be cultivating conversations. That guy gets missed, that guy gets passed over, that guy gets the passive aggressive engagement. Like, come on, like, I'm just trying to be real. We know how it goes. But what if that didn't have to be true? And what if even when there was a moment where someone was missed, when we missed the mark, that there was grace strong enough for ourselves, right? Because the enemy's also working against us. You suck at this. Look, you're like that guy. Look at that guy. You missed it. You suck at this. Like, that's how the enemy works. So there's grace for you. That's not true. Which gives you the confidence and the boldness to say, hey, dude, I'm sorry, man. I got a little caught up. Or, hey, man, or again, how the conversation goes. This guy shares, and that provokes something in another guy, and he speaks up, which is great. But having the eyes and the ears to pause and circle back. Hey, Jim, sorry, man. Can we just circle back to that for just a moment, bro? Can you tell us more about that? I do this really hard. I'm really sorry, man, that you're going through this. Or, oh my gosh, Jim, bro, man, let's talk about it. Like the circle back. I'm sorry I missed it. Sorry I missed you. You deserve more time than this. You deserve my eyes. You deserve my heart to engage in this moment. That's what we're talking about. And there's grace to both empower us and when we get it wrong and to circle back. This is so very important. The enemy loves to use envy. Dude, 100%. Right? Just picture you're the guy sitting in the room and either you're envious of the stories they're sharing because maybe how they're experiencing the goodness of God is not presently how you feel like you're experiencing it. They're getting breakthrough. They're getting blessings. God's bringing redemption to their situation. Meanwhile, you're sitting here like, I don't know, where's that at for me? So there's that piece of it. Or just envious on how we may engage with other relationships. Like the enemy is out to steal, kill, and destroy. Make no doubt about it. And I think that's the charge that I'm trying to give you fellas and me is that's part of our responsibility. That's part of what we get to do as warrior kings, as shepherds, is to partner with the good shepherd to thwart every advancement and strategy and tactic of the enemy. And we got to be able to engage that. And so here's the last thing I want to give you guys, the question that I'd like for you to ponder, right, is, again, in the context of allies, in the context of your groups, the context of your Bible studies, your coffee meetings, however you're doing this, however you are partnering with God for the mission in the heart of other men in your life. Okay. I'd like for you to maybe try to pinpoint where maybe because of your margin, your lack thereof, the condition of where your heart was and mind was in the moment when they tried to engage, or maybe it was just something that you just got caught up and you were busy, or this guy started opening up, but we jumped over here and now, that moment's gone. Whatever that looks like, I'd like for you to try to identify one of those and go back with Jesus. And go back with Jesus and how you might pause and name it and re-engage. The circle back. And there's these 3 questions right here in this devotion plan that are meant to help you kind of build that, right? Father, please remind me of a time when I felt unheard or listened to well. Would you help me remember what it felt like? And then how might this memory help me show empathy to others? Jesus, would you help me see where I react in some of these or other unhelpful ways of listening? What might be the cause of why I relate as I currently do? Brilliant, introspective question. And the Holy Spirit, where might I need to extend grace to myself for the ways that I have not listened to others as well as I might have done? Would you guide me through the process of self-forgiveness? So let's start there. Let's start with pausing, naming it, and circling back to it in our own lives, in our own hearts, with the help of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This has been really, really fun, man, and I'm really enjoying hanging out and particularly going through this devotional. So make sure you grab a copy of it. The link is above, and continue reading on your own. Last thing I want to tell you before I sign off today is we do have a pretty major DFG, 2 major DFG events coming up. The first one is in Troy, Ohio, on the weekend was December the 7th, I believe. Let me double check. December the 7th. December the 6th, my birthday. I should remember that. December the 6th in Troy, Ohio. And then also January 24th right here in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. So go to zoweh.org/events to get more information on that. Would love to have you guys there, particularly if you are seeking to try and facilitate and host a DFG event in your area next year. Would be a great place for you to come and see. Bring some guys with you, bring a team with you so they can taste and see and get excited. And then we can work with you to see if we can pull that off sometime in 2026. Okay, so that's December the 6th, 2025 in Troy, Ohio, and January 24th, 2026 right here in Raleigh, Durham. So appreciate you guys. Knox says re-engaging is crazy. The enemy just wants us to remember it and forget it. Diving into it has got to anger the enemy. Dude, yeah, 100%, bro. And if we just go back to the whole topic of this day's reading and today's conversation is that poor listening isn't harmless, right? It's not just, oops, sorry, and you keep going. There's a responsibility to that, right? There's a responsibility to it. And I think part of being a leader, part of being an ally is stepping into that responsibility. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. We'll keep the conversation going in the Zoweh Allies Facebook group, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.